My name is Maddie Lewis. I'm 22 years old, and in the high-stakes world of Manhattan's legal elite, I am the glitch in a perfectly programmed machine. 2 weeks ago, my father stood before 50 people, a curated assembly of power players, high-ranking relatives, and senior partners from the city's most predatory law firms, at my graduation party. He raised his baccarat champagne glass, the light catching the gold rim as if it were a trophy. But he wasn't looking at me. He was looking at my younger sister, Olivia, who sat there like a debutante awaiting her coronation. And then he said the words that still rattle around my skull like a lead bullet. "I wish it was you holding that Ivy League diploma tonight, Olivia. You are the only child who has ever truly understood what it means to carry the Lewis legacy. You are the only one who has ever made me proud." My mother didn't even flinch. She simply nodded in agreement, her pearls reflecting the cold, clinical glow of the ballroom chandeliers. No one objected. No one even glanced my way to see if I was still breathing. I left quietly, my heels clicking against the marble floor in a rhythm that no one bothered to follow. Not a single person noticed the guest of honor had vanished. But what happened after that? They're still reeling from the aftershocks. Before we begin, if you know what it feels like to be the ghost at your own table, please take a moment to like and subscribe. Where are you watching from, and what time is it there? Is it late enough for some cold, hard truths? Drop a comment and let me know. Now, let me tell you how this dynasty started to crumble. Let me introduce you to the Lewis. My father, Richard Lewis, is a successful litigation attorney, senior partner at one of the most feared white shoe law firms in the financial district. My mother, Patricia, comes from 3 generations of constitutional lawyers who view anything less than a Supreme Court clerkship as a hobby. And my little sister, Olivia, she's 19, just finished her first year of pre-law at Columbia, and she's the celestial body around which my parents orbit. Then there's me, the black sheep who chose nursing. In a house built on billable hours and legal precedents, I chose bedpans and 12-hour shifts. I still remember the day I told them 4 years ago. I was 18, clutching my acceptance letter like a golden ticket, my heart hammering against my ribs. My father looked at me like I just told a joke that wasn't funny. "Nursing?" He sat down his 25-year-old Macallan, the ice clinking with a sound like breaking glass. "You want to be a servant to doctors for the rest of your life? You want to trade a mahogany desk for a plastic cart?" My mother sighed, the kind of weary sound she usually reserved for a bad dry cleaning job. "Our family has been in law for 3 generations, Maddie. We don't just follow the law, we shape it. You're the first one to break tradition for something so menial." I tried to explain. I wanted to help people, to be the one holding a hand in the ICU when the world goes dark, to actually make a difference that wasn't measured in a settlement check. They didn't hear a word. To them, I had simply resigned from the family business. From that day forward, every phone call home revolved around Olivia. Olivia's GPA, Olivia's internship applications at the DA's office, Olivia's bright, shining future in the hallowed halls of Harvard. Meanwhile, I graduated top of my nursing class at NYU, worked double shifts at a community clinic to pay my own tuition, and received commendation after commendation from my professors. Not once did they ask how I was doing. Not once did they attend a single pinning ceremony. I was a shadow in a house of spotlights. But there was one person in my family who always kept track. Someone who called every Sunday without fail, even when the reception in her upstate cottage was spotty. Someone who remembered every exam, every clinical rotation, every small victory in the oncology ward. Someone my father had never respected because she wore scrubs instead of a silk suit. And that person would change everything. 2 months before graduation, I received an email from my mother. No greeting, no how are you, just the cold, hard logistics of a corporate merger. Your graduation party will be held at the Sterling, 42 floors above Midtown, 7 p.m. Saturday. Your father has finalized the guest list. You don't need to worry about anything. I read it 3 times, the blue light of my phone burning my eyes in my dark studio apartment. My graduation party, planned entirely without me, like a gala for a charity that didn't exist. I pulled up the guest list attachment. My stomach dropped lower than a New York subway line. 53 names. I recognized maybe 10 of them. Relatives I barely knew who only showed up for funerals and weddings. The rest? My father's colleagues, business associates, partners from the firm. Even Olivia's Alpha Phi sorority friends made the cut. But my friends? My nursing professors? My colleagues from the hospital where I'd done my clinicals through 30-hour stretches? Not a single one. I called my mother immediately. Mom, can I invite some of my own people? Professor Martinez was my mentor for 2 years, and my friend Celia... Her voice cut in, smooth as a deposition. Madison, this is an opportunity for our family to make an impression on the senior partners. Your friends, they wouldn't fit in. They don't speak the language of the Sterling. I felt the words like a slap across the face in a quiet room. Wouldn't fit in. You know what I mean, honey. The partners' wives will be there. We need the right atmosphere, the right pedigree. I hung up without saying goodbye, my breathing shallow. That night, I looked at the invitation card my mother had sent for my records. My hands shook as I read it. Celebrating the Lewis family was printed in elegant gold script. Not celebrating Maddie Lewis. Not Maddie's graduation, just the family. Like I was a footnote in my own story, a line item in a budget that had already been balanced. I should have seen it coming. I had been trained to be invisible for 22 years, but I still wasn't prepared for what they had actually planned. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in my tiny apartment in Queens, the sound of the 7 train rattling my windows, staring at the ceiling, running through 4 years of memories. 4 years of swallowing my pride, 4 years of telling myself, just wait. When they see you succeed, when they see you save a life, they'll come around. But the truth was becoming impossible to ignore now. The more I stayed silent, the more invisible I became. If I let this party happen the way they planned, if I smiled and nodded while they paraded Olivia around like a blue ribbon trophy, I would officially become the failed daughter in everyone's eyes. Every late night studying under the hum of a flickering desk lamp, every patient I'd comforted through the worst nights of their lives, every perfect score I'd earned, all of it would be erased by a toast to a sister who hadn't even started her journey yet. I looked at my diploma frame on the wall. Summa cum laude, top of my class. A piece of paper that had cost me 4 years of no vacations, no social life, and enough caffeine to stop a heart. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. Unknown number. I ignored it. Too tired for telemarketers selling insurance I couldn't afford. A voicemail notification popped up. I almost deleted it, but some gut instinct honed in the ER, made me listen. Hello, this is a message from Maddie Lewis. This is the office of Presbyterian Memorial Hospital. We have some important news we'd like to share with you in person. Please call us back at your earliest convenience. Presbyterian Memorial, the most prestigious hospital in the tri-state area. The place where getting an interview was nearly impossible for a veteran, let alone a new grad. I called back immediately. I'm sorry, the receptionist said, her voice crisp. The office is closed for the evening. Dr. Webb will be available tomorrow morning. Dr. Webb, the director of recruitment himself. The man who decided who lived and died in the professional world of medicine. What could be so important that he needed to tell me in person? I didn't sleep at all that night. The adrenaline was a cold fire in my veins. The next morning, I called the one person who had never let me down. Nana, it's Maddie. Eleanor Mitchell's voice was warm as a wool blanket in a blizzard. I was just thinking about you, sweetheart. How are the party preparations going? I told her everything. The guest list I had no say in, the invitation that erased my name, the feeling of being a ghost haunting my own life. Silence on the other end. A long one, heavy with the weight of decades of unspoken frustration. Did your father invite me? She finally asked. I hesitated, the silence stretching between us. I'm not sure, Nana. I see. Her tone shifted, hardened just slightly, the steel beneath the silk. Well, I'll be there regardless. Invited or not, I'm not missing my granddaughter's moment. Nana, I don't want to cause trouble. Trouble? She laughed softly, a sound like dry leaves skittering on pavement. Sweetheart, I spent 40 years as a head nurse in the Bronx. I faced down doctors who thought they were gods and administrators who thought they owned us. Your father's disapproval doesn't frighten me any more than a toddler's tantrum. I felt tears prick my eyes. At least someone was in my corner in this city of glass. Maddie, she continued, your value doesn't depend on whether your parents can see it. A diamond is still a diamond, even if it's buried under a pile of legal briefs. I know what you've accomplished, and I'm proud enough for all of them. Thank you, Nana. Oh, by the way, her voice turned lighter, almost conspiratorial. I ran into Dr. Webb last week, the recruitment director at Presbyterian Memorial. Do you remember him? My heart skipped a beat, then two. You know Dr. Webb? We served on the Community Health Foundation board together for 15 years. I taught that man how to read an EKG when he was still an intern. He mentioned your name, said some very impressive things about you. What? What did he say? Call him back, sweetheart. I think you'll want to hear it from him directly. She hung up before I could ask more, leaving me standing in the middle of my kitchen with a dial tone and a spark of hope. What exactly had my grandmother told him about me? 3 days before the gala at the Sterling, the humid New York air felt heavy, like a storm was brewing over the Hudson. I drove to my parents' brownstone in the Upper East Side, a place that always felt more like a museum of my father's ego than a home. I found him in his mahogany-paneled study, the walls lined with leather-bound legal volumes and framed clippings of his high-profile victories. He didn't look up when I entered, his eyes fixed on a multi-billion-dollar merger agreement. "Dad, can we talk about the party?" He kept reading, his Mont Blanc pen hovering over a signature line. "What about it? The catering is set and the security detail is briefed." "I'd like to invite a few people. Professor Martinez, who headed the NYU clinical program, and some friends from the hospital who saw me through my final rotations." "No." He turned a page, the crisp sound echoing in the silent room. "The list is finalized, Maddie. There's no room for expansion." "Dad, this is my graduation party. Or at least, that's what the calendar says." He finally looked up. His eyes were cool, calculating, the same look he used to intimidate witnesses in a deposition. "This is a Lewis family event, a strategic gathering of our network. I just want my mentor there. She guided me for 2 years, taught me more about humanity than any textbook." "A nursing professor?" He actually laughed, a sharp, condescending sound that made my skin crawl. "What will my colleagues think? That we've pivoted into charity work?" "They'll think I was well educated. They'll think this family has one child who actually understands the value of service." "They'll think this family has one child who couldn't keep up with the family trade," he countered, his voice dropping to a dangerous octave. The words hit like a punch to the solar plexus. I steadied myself against the heavy oak doorframe. "Dad, I graduated summa cum laude. I was top of my class in one of the toughest programs in the country." "In nursing, Madison." He said it like the word itself was a dirty secret, something to be whispered in dark corners. "Your sister is going to Harvard Law on a fast track to a federal clerkship. Do you understand what that means for the Lewis legacy?" "I thought this party was about my graduation, not a press release for Olivia." He finally set down his papers, looked at me fully, and what I saw in his eyes wasn't anger. It was worse. It was complete indifference, the kind you show to a stranger on the subway. "I've already told everyone that we're announcing Olivia's Harvard acceptance. This party is the perfect opportunity to solidify her standing." He picked up his pen again, effectively dismissing me. "You just need to show up, smile, and try not to draw too much attention to yourself. Don't make this difficult, Maddie." I stood there frozen. Try not to draw too much attention to yourself. At my own celebration. "I understand," I said quietly, my voice hollow. But I was lying. For the first time in my life, I was lying to the man who taught me that the truth was the only currency that mattered. I found my mother in the kitchen, the air smelling of expensive lilies and floor wax. She was arranging flowers for the centerpieces, her movements precise and clinical. "Mom, I need your help." She didn't stop arranging. "With what, dear? The seating chart is already with the calligrapher." "Talk to Dad about the party, about making it actually about my graduation, about acknowledging the work I put in for 4 years." "Madison," she sighed, her shoulders sagging slightly. "I don't want to create conflict. Your father has had a very stressful quarter. You'd be standing up for me. I'd be disrupting the family harmony by supporting a rebellion." She finally looked at me. Her expression was the same patient, slightly tired look she'd worn my entire life. The look of a woman who had traded her soul for social stability. Sweetheart, you've always been so sensitive. Your father means well. He just expresses it differently. He's turning my graduation into Olivia's announcement party. He's burying me alive. He's celebrating both of you, in his own way. He literally said he wished Olivia had my diploma. He said she was the only one who made him proud. You must have misheard him, Madison. Richard is a diplomat. He wouldn't be so blunt. I was standing right there, Mom. I wasn't a ghost yet. She set down a rose. For a moment, just a moment, I thought I saw something flicker in her eyes. Guilt. Recognition. A memory of the woman she was before she became Mrs. Richard Lewis. Then it was gone, replaced by the polished mask of an Upper East Side matriarch. Your father has worked very hard to build this family's reputation in the New York bar. The least we can do is support his vision. Even if his vision erases me? Silence. The only sound was the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway. You're choosing a side, Mom. You're keeping the peace by sacrificing me. She picked up another flower. Her hands were steady, as if she were performing surgery on our relationship. Her voice was steadier. You've always been too dramatic, Madison. Just like your grandmother. It's exhausting. I left without another word, the silence of that house feeling like a tomb. That evening, back in my cramped apartment with the neon glow of the streetlights filtering through the blinds, an email arrived that changed everything. The subject line read, "Formal offer of employment, Presbyterian Memorial Health System." I opened it with trembling fingers, the blue light reflected in my wide eyes. And suddenly, I had a choice to make. I read the email 3 times to make sure I wasn't hallucinating from lack of sleep. Presbyterian Memorial was offering me a position in their Level 1 Trauma Emergency Department. Not just any position, the most competitive nursing role in the entire state. Hundreds of graduates applied every year. Most Ivy League grads didn't even make the first cut. And they wanted me. The salary made my jaw drop. $78,000 starting base, with a signing bonus that made my head spin. I'd done my research. Junior associates at my father's law firm, the ones who slaved away for 80 hours a week, they started at $65,000. I was out earning the prodigies before I even stepped onto the floor. But the next paragraph was what truly caught my attention. We would like to present this offer formally at a significant event in your life to honor your exceptional achievements. Please let us know if you have any upcoming occasions where this would be appropriate. Our board of directors values public recognition of excellence. They wanted to make it public, a ceremony, a moment. I looked at the invitation card on my desk, celebrating the Lewis family. A thought formed, dangerous, audacious, and entirely out of character for the girl who always stayed in the shadows. What if I gave them exactly what they wanted? I scrolled to the bottom of the email. There was a postscript that made my breath catch. P.S. Mrs. Eleanor Mitchell recommended you to our attention. She described you as the most exceptional nursing student she has witnessed in her 40 years in the profession. We are honored to have you join our medical family. Nana. She hadn't just mentioned my name to Dr. Webb. She'd actively advocated for me, used her decades of clout as a former chief of nursing and her credibility to open a door. And she'd never said a word, letting me believe I was standing alone. I didn't reply to the email that night. I needed to think, to plot. to ensure every piece was in place. My family wanted to use my party to celebrate Olivia, to minimize me, to make me invisible. Maybe it was time to let them see exactly who they'd been ignoring. The ghost was about to become very, very real. I drove to Nana Eleanor's cottage in Westchester the next morning. She was waiting on the porch with tea already poured, the steam rising into the cool morning air. "You got the email," she said. Not a question, but a statement of fact. "Why didn't you tell me?" She smiled, stirring her tea, the silver spoon clinking against the porcelain. "Because it wasn't my achievement to announce, Maddie. I simply told Dr. Webb the truth. Everything else you earned yourself in those double shifts and sleepless nights." I sat beside her, the scent of lavender and old books surrounding us. "Nana, tell me about Dad. About why he's like this." Her smile faded, replaced by a look of ancient wisdom. "Your father came from nothing, Madison. He worked his way through law school on predatory loans and pure spite. When he married your mother, he married into 3 generations of legal prestige, and he spent every day since trying to prove he belonged." She paused, her eyes looking toward the tree line. "The first time he met me, he looked at my nurse's uniform and said, 'I hope your daughter will have a better life than you.' He said that to my face at their engagement dinner at the Yale Club." She shrugged. "I've never been someone worth impressing in his eyes. Just the mother-in-law who cleans up after doctors." "But you've done so much. The foundation, the scholarships, the community health programs. None of which involve a Juris Doctor, sweetheart." She reached over and squeezed my hand, her grip surprisingly strong. "Your father measures worth by titles and billable prestige. People like us? We measure it by lives touched and hearts kept beating." She stood up and walked inside. When she returned, she was holding a gold-embossed envelope. "This came for you last month. I've been waiting for the right moment." I opened it. A letter from the Dean of the NYU School of Nursing, a formal commendation for academic excellence, and a nomination for the National Future Healthcare Leaders Program. "Nana, this is huge." "You don't need your parents' recognition, sweetheart." Her eyes were fierce, reflecting the fire of a woman who had never backed down. "But if they insist on looking, let's give them something to see. Let's show them what a Lewis is truly capable of." That afternoon, I called Dr. Samuel Webb. "Madison." His voice was warm, professional, the sound of a man who handled emergencies with a calm hand. "I'm so glad you reached out. Did you receive our offer?" "I did. I'm honored, Dr. Webb, truly." "The honor is ours, Maddie. Your clinical evaluations were exceptional. Your professors couldn't say enough good things about your instinct under pressure." I took a deep breath, the NYC skyline glittering in the distance. "Dr. Webb, about the formal presentation you mentioned, I have an event this Saturday, my graduation party at the Sterling restaurant." "That sounds perfect. A celebration of your achievement among your peers and family." I hesitated. "It's complicated. My family doesn't exactly understand the value of nursing. They see it as a detour, not a destination." "I see." His tone shifted, became knowing, the professional mask slipping to reveal a man who had seen this dynamic before. "Mrs. Mitchell mentioned something similar. Your family has lawyers, I understand?" 3 generations of them. Well, I could hear him smiling through the phone, a shark-like grin that made me feel safe for the first time in years. I suppose we'll have to show them what a real achievement looks like. I'll bring the formal offer letter and a small surprise. What kind of surprise? You'll see. Trust me, Madison. Saturday evening will be the kind of memory the Lewis won't be able to litigate away. The Sterling was a glass and steel cathedral of old money ambition, perched 42 floors above the restless pulse of Midtown Manhattan. Even more impressive than I remembered, it felt like a fortress designed to keep the unworthy out. Crystal chandeliers cast surgical golden light across white linen tablecloths so crisp they could cut paper. Fresh baccarat roses adorned every surface, their scent thick and cloying like expensive perfume. Waitstaff in tailored black uniforms moved silently between tables like shadows, filling champagne glasses and adjusting silverware with mathematical precision. 50 guests minimum, the absolute minimum required to maintain the illusion of Rella Lewis. I scanned the room and recognized maybe a dozen faces. Distant aunts from Connecticut, cousins I saw once every 3 years at forced holiday dinners. The rest were strangers in $4,000 suits. My father's colleagues, his partners, the men who traded in human lives from behind mahogany desks, and their wives who wore their diamonds like armor. I arrived at exactly 7 o'clock. My father was standing at the entrance, his posture perfect, shaking hands with a silver-haired man I didn't recognize. "Richard, a masterstroke of a year, truly," the man was saying. "Big occasion for your family." "Thank you, Charles. The Lewis legacy is in good hands. Big things ahead." Dad noticed me approaching. A brief nod, the kind of acknowledgement he'd give a delivery driver. Nothing more. Then he turned back to Charles as if I were just another passing server blending into the wallpaper. I moved further into the room, the air feeling thinner with every step. My mother was near the head table, fussing over Olivia's dress, a gorgeous bespoke Vera Wang emerald silk gown that probably cost more than my monthly rent in Queens. Meanwhile, I was wearing the navy blue cocktail dress I'd bought from a clearance rack with 3 weeks of grueling double-shift overtime pay. "Madison, there you are." Mom barely glanced at me, her eyes already scanning the room for the next high-profile arrival. "You're at table 6, near the back, next to the kitchen service entrance." "Near the back?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "The front tables are for your father's senior partners and the judicial committee members." She smoothed Olivia's collar with a devotion she had never shown me. "You understand?" I understood perfectly. I was the inconvenient truth they had to hide. I walked to table 6, found my name card, and looked up at the monstrous banner stretching across the main wall. "Celebrating the Lewis family" in elegant gold script. No mention of graduation, no mention of the 4 years of blood, sweat, and anatomy textbooks. No mention of me. I was a guest at my own party, a backdrop for someone else's announcement. I was the before picture in a before and after success story. But they didn't know I'd brought guests of my own. At 7:15, the restaurant's heavy oak doors opened. Nana Eleanor walked in like she owned the entire zip code. She was wearing a navy blue Chanel suit that probably cost more than my father's annual club fees. Her silver hair was perfectly styled, not a strand out of place. Her posture was ramrod straight, forged by 4 decades of standing on her feet in operating rooms. At 78, She still commanded attention without saying a word, radiating a quiet authority that made the room's artificial chatter falter. My father's face went pale, his professional mask cracking for a split second. Eleanor. He stepped forward, blocking her path as if she were a security breach. I don't recall sending you an invitation. Nana smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. It was the smile of a woman who had seen people at their worst and wasn't impressed. I'm here for my granddaughter's graduation party, Richard. I don't need a formal summons to celebrate real merit. I don't need your invitation. This is a private event for family, strategic partners. Yes, I am family. She stepped around him effortlessly, her silk scarf trailing behind her like a battle flag. Whether you like it or not, I'm the only one here who actually knows what Madison had to endure to get that degree. My mother rushed over, her heels clicking urgently on the marble floor like a frantic Morse code. Mother, please, let's not make a scene. The judge is watching. I'm not making a scene, Patricia. I'm simply attending the only event in this room that actually matters. Nana's eyes swept the room, cutting through the pretension. Where's Madison seated? Oh, table 6, in the back. How appropriate, Nana said, her voice dripping with enough sarcasm to frost the windows. Right by the exit, just in case you need to pretend she was never here. Several guests had stopped their conversations, watching the exchange with the predatory interest of people who lived for social scandal. My father laughed, a forced, too loud sound that didn't reach his eyes. My mother-in-law, everyone. Always a bit fond of the theatrical. Nana didn't acknowledge him. She walked straight to me, her arms open. There's my girl. I hugged her tight, fighting back tears that felt like hot lead. I have a surprise, Nana, I whispered. She pulled back, eyes twinkling with a fire that matched my own. I know, sweetheart. I brought the matches, if you're ready to light a fuse. Before I could ask what she meant, a server announced that dinner would begin shortly. My father was already moving through the crowd doing damage control, charming his partners with that practiced Ivy League smile. He had no idea what was coming. Neither did I entirely, but I was about to find out. After dinner, 3 courses of food that tasted like cardboard because my throat was so tight, my father stood up and tapped his champagne glass with a sterling silver spoon. The room fell silent. Thank you all for being here tonight. His voice carried easily, practiced from years of shouting down opposing counsel in the Supreme Court. We're gathered to celebrate our family. A small pause. The air in the room seemed to freeze. I noticed he didn't say my name. As many of you know, the Lewis family has a proud tradition in law. 3 generations of elite attorneys, and soon to be 4. He turned toward Olivia, who was beaming at the head table under the spotlight like a pageant queen. I want to raise a glass to the future, to my youngest daughter, Olivia, who has just been accepted to Harvard Law. Applause rippled through the room, thick and self-congratulatory. I saw my mother nodding proudly, her face glowing with the reflected light of Olivia's success. My father continued, his eyes still on Olivia, ignoring the back of the room where I sat in the shadows. I wish... He paused for effect, his voice dropping to a theatrical whisper. I truly wish that Olivia was the one holding a diploma tonight. She is the only child who has ever truly understood the weight of the Lewis name, the only one who has ever truly made me proud. More applause, but quieter now. Even in a room full of sharks, the cruelty of the statement felt like a jagged blade. I noticed several guests exchanging uncomfortable glances, the kind of pity that feels like dirt on your skin. My mother nodded along, smiling as if her own daughter hadn't just been publicly disowned. No one looked at me. I sat frozen at table 6, feeling every eye that deliberately avoided mine. The pitying glances from the few relatives who bothered, the indifference from the rest who saw me as a failed investment. Olivia was still smiling, but something flickered across her face, a moment of discomfort, maybe even guilt, as she realized she was being built up on the ruins of my dignity. Then it was gone, swallowed by the intoxicating rush of being the favorite. My father raised his glass higher. To the Lewis family, to our brightest star, Olivia. Everyone drank. I didn't touch my glass. The water in it was as bitter as my thoughts. My grandmother stood up, her chair scraping against the floor with a sound like a gunshot. The room went silent again, and I realized this was the moment everything would change. Richard. Nana's voice cut through the silence like a scalpel through soft tissue. I believe you forgot something crucial. My father's smile tightened, becoming a thin, white line of suppressed rage. Eleanor, this really isn't the time for one of your nurses Gree-Lewis. This is exactly the time. She stepped away from table 6, moving toward the center of the room with the grace of a seasoned litigator. You just gave a toast at your daughter's graduation party. The one who spent 4 years in the trenches of a hospital while you were busy billing hours. You didn't mention her once. Murmurs rippled through the crowd, the social atmosphere shifting from celebration to a blood sport. I mentioned the family. You wished a different child was holding the diploma. Nana's voice was calm but razor sharp. At the party for the child who actually earned it. The child who graduated summa cum laude while you were looking the other way. Eleanor, you're embarrassing yourself. No, Richard, you've been doing that for years. You just haven't had a mirror big enough to see it. Gasps from several tables. I saw my father's colleagues leaning in, suddenly very interested. This was better than any courtroom drama. This is a family matter, my mother interjected, standing up, her voice trembling with the effort to maintain decorum. We shouldn't air private issues in public. Private? Nana laughed softly, a dangerous sound. You planned a public gala to announce Olivia's college acceptance at Madison's graduation celebration. You treated her like a servant at her own feast. You put her at the back table. You didn't even put her name on the banner. She gestured at the gold lettering that felt like a tombstone to me. There's nothing private about this humiliation, Patricia. You invited 50 witnesses to your own failure as parents. My father's face was turning red, the deep, pulsing crimson of a man losing control. I've had enough of this. Eleanor, sit down or leave. I'll do neither. The room was utterly still. 50 people watching, waiting for the next blow. Then the restaurant doors opened with a heavy thud. A man walked in, mid-40s, distinguished gray at his temples, wearing a charcoal suit that signaled power without screaming for it. He was carrying a large navy blue envelope. He walked directly toward me, ignoring the head table entirely. My apologies for the late arrival, he said, loud enough for everyone to hear, his voice carrying the weight of institutional authority. I have urgent business with Miss Madison Lewis. My father frowned, his authority challenged on his own turf. Who the hell are you? The man smiled, a professional, lethal smile. I'm Dr. Samuel Webb, Director of Recruitment at Presbyterian Memorial Hospital. The room went completely silent, the kind of silence that happens right before a crash. Dr. Webb walked past my father without acknowledging him, stopping directly in front of my table. Miss Lewis, he extended his hand. It's an honor to meet you in person. The medical board has been eager to have you on the team. I stood, shaking his hand, my legs feeling unsteady like a newborn colt. Dr. Webb, I didn't expect you to come all the way to Midtown, I managed, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I wanted to deliver this personally, Maddie. Exceptional talent deserves an exceptional presentation. He held up the heavy vellum envelope, the gold-embossed seal of the hospital glinting like a badge of office. May I? I nodded, my breath hitching in my throat. He opened it, pulling out an official document with the Presbyterian Memorial Executive letterhead. Then he turned to address the room, his presence instantly sucking the oxygen out of my father's carefully staged performance. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for interrupting your evening, but I have an announcement that couldn't wait for a Monday morning board meeting. My father stepped forward, his face a mask of wounded authority. Now wait just a minute. This is a private celebration, Madison Lewis, Dr. Webb continued, ignoring him as if he were a minor clerk at a traffic court. Graduated summa cum laude from the NYU School of Nursing, top of her class. Her clinical evaluations were the highest we've seen in 15 years of recruiting from the Ivy League and beyond. He held up the letter for the entire room to see, its authority undeniable. Presbyterian Memorial Hospital is honored to offer her a position in our Level 1 Trauma Emergency Department. Effective immediately. Her starting base salary is $78,000 per year, with a comprehensive signing bonus and a fast track to nurse practitioner specialization. Audible gasps rippled from multiple tables, the sound of 50 socialites suddenly recalculating their respect. I heard someone whisper, 78,000 for a new grad? In this economy? Dr. Webb smiled, a sharp, professional glint in his eyes. For an exceptional nurse, the ROI is immeasurable. To put that in perspective, most first-year associates at the white shoe firms downstairs start at $65,000. He looked directly at my father, his gaze leveling the playing field. If anyone here wants to compare starting market values. The silence was deafening, heavy with the weight of my father's shattered ego. My father's face had gone from the deep red of a stroke risk to a deathly paper white. My mother's hand was pressed against her mouth, her eyes darting between Dr. Webb and the stunned partners at the head table. At the head table, Olivia was staring at me with wide eyes. Not jealousy, but a visceral kind of shock. Surprise. Real, unfiltered surprise. Dr. Webb handed me the letter, his hand steady and warm. Congratulations, Madison. You've earned this through sheer grit and clinical brilliance. Thank you, I managed, my voice finally finding its footing. But he wasn't finished. There's one more thing, Dr. Webb said, his voice dropping to a tone of profound respect. The small surprise I mentioned. He reached into his silk-lined jacket and pulled out another envelope. This is a letter from the National Nursing Board and the Dean of NYU. It was addressed directly to Madison, but given the unique atmosphere of this evening, I thought I'd share a portion of it. He unfolded the paper and began to read, each word a hammer blow to the failed daughter narrative. Madison Lewis is the most exceptional nursing student we have trained in the past 15 years. She achieved not only perfect academic marks, but demonstrated the kind of battlefield composure and diagnostic intuition that exceeded every expectation during her clinical rotations at Bellevue and Presbyterian. We are proud to nominate her for the National Future Healthcare Leaders Program, a distinction reserved for the top 1% of healthcare graduates nationwide. He looked up, letting the 1% comment hang in the air like a challenge. The top 1% nationwide. Applause erupted. Not polite, curated applause, but genuine, enthusiastic applause from people who respected nothing more than a winner. I saw my father's colleagues nodding approvingly, turning to look at me with new respect, the kind they usually reserved for a winning verdict. "My God," I heard someone say. "Richard, you never told us she was a prodigy. You were hiding a powerhouse." My father opened his mouth, but for the first time in his career, the great litigator had no opening statement. Nothing came out. Dr. Webb folded the letter and handed it to me. "Your grandmother was right about you, Madison. Every word about your spine of steel and your heart of gold." Nana stepped forward, her chin held high, her Chanel suit looking like armor. "For those who are wondering," she announced, her voice carrying across the room with the authority of a general, "I was the one who introduced Madison to Presbyterian Memorial. I spent 40 years as a nurse, building relationships and saving lives in rooms that Richard here has never respected." She smiled, a sharp, triumphant curve of her lips. "Turns out being a servant to doctors has its advantages when you're the one who taught the doctors everything they know." My father looked like he'd been slapped with a heavy legal brief. My mother sank into her chair, her social standing crumbling in real time. And Olivia? Olivia was staring at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Not pity, not jealousy, but something like profound, newfound respect. The room was still buzzing when I stood up, pushing my chair back with a deliberate screech that commanded total silence. 50 pairs of eyes turned to me, waiting for the girl from table 6 to finally speak. I'd spent my whole life avoiding this moment, staying quiet, staying small, hoping that if I just worked hard enough, they'd eventually see me as something more than a disappointment. They never did, so I stopped waiting for a seat at their table. "Thank you, Dr. Webb." My voice was steadier than I expected, ringing out with the clarity of a bell. "Thank you, Nana." I turned to face the room, to face my parents, my gaze meeting my father's for the first time without flinching. I spent 4 years trying to prove I was worthy of this family. I worked double shifts at free clinics. I never asked for help when my rent was late or when I was too tired to eat. I graduated at the top of my class while being treated like a ghost at home. I paused, letting the weight of the silence settle. Tonight, I realized something. I don't need to prove anything to anyone in this room. My father started to speak. Madison, you misunderstand. I understand perfectly, Dad. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The power had already shifted. You wanted to use my graduation party to announce Olivia's acceptance. You wished she had my diploma because you can't see value in anything that doesn't have a law degree attached to it. You sat me at the back table like I was an embarrassment. I gestured at the banner with its hollow gold-leafed lies. You didn't even put my name up there. You celebrated a family that doesn't include me. The silence was absolute. The kind of silence you find in an empty courtroom after the sentence is read. I'm not angry. I meant it. The anger had burned away, leaving something cleaner, something sharper behind. I'm just done. Done waiting, done hoping, done pretending you'll change or that your approval is the only currency that matters. I picked up Dr. Webb's letter, the paper crisp and real in my hand. From today, I'm setting a new boundary. I won't beg to be loved anymore. I'll invest my energy in people who actually value me for who I am, not who they want me to be. I looked at Nana. Her eyes were glistening with a pride that no Ivy League degree could ever buy. Then I looked back at my parents. I'm not asking for an apology. Those only work if there's a heart behind them. I'm just letting you know that things will be different now. The shadow has left the building. My father finally found his voice, though it sounded thin and reedy. Madison, let's discuss this privately. This is unseemly. No, I smiled, a real liberated smile. I think we're done discussing. The evidence is all in, Dad. The jury is out. My father's face cycled through several emotions: shock, anger, and finally, something that looked almost like panic as he realized his carefully curated world was falling apart in front of the people he spent 20 years trying to impress. Madison, you're being dramatic. He forced a laugh, glancing at his colleagues to see if they were still on his side. You know how it is. Family misunderstandings. This wasn't a misunderstanding, Dad. You literally wished my sister had my diploma in front of 50 people. You were making a toast to someone else at my party. In my world, that's not a misunderstanding. It's a character flaw. A man stood up from one of the front tables, the VIP tables. I recognized him from my father's office. Mr. Harris, a senior partner and the man my father feared most. Richard. His voice was quiet but firm, carrying the weight of a death sentence. I think your daughter deserves an apology. A real one. Several heads nodded around the room, the tide of social opinion turning into a tsunami. My father's laugh died in his throat, choked by the cold reality of social suicide. Charles, this is a family matter. You made it public when you gave that toast, Richard. You made it our business when you tried to humiliate a summa cum laude graduate in front of her peers. Mr. Harris looked at me with something like respect, the kind of respect one professional gives another. Young lady, congratulations on your achievements. That's genuinely impressive. Presbyterian is lucky to have you. Thank you, sir. My father was losing control of the room. I could see it in his eyes. The realization that his carefully planned event, the Lewis family coronation, had completely derailed. Everyone, please! My mother stood up, her voice strained and cracking like old porcelain. This is between our family, Patricia. Nana's voice cut through. For once in your life, be quiet. You've stayed silent in the wrong moments for 22 years. Don't start talking now. My mother's mouth fell open, her social mask finally shattering into 1,000 pieces. The room was utterly still. My father looked around at his colleagues, his partners, the people whose opinions he'd spent decades cultivating. All of them were watching him with new eyes, eyes that saw a small man trying to make himself feel big by belittling his own child. He swallowed hard, the great litigator finally finding himself on the wrong side of the law. I don't know what to say. For the first time in my life, Richard Lewis was speechless. And I realized this was enough. The silence was my victory. The Sterling felt different as the crowds thinned. The high-octane glamour of the evening had evaporated, leaving behind the cold, sterile reality of a social PR disaster. The party dissolved quickly after that, the guests moving toward the exits with a quiet urgency, as if embarrassment were contagious. Guests made polite, strained excuses and headed for the elevators, avoiding the head table where my parents stood like statues in a crumbling temple. I stood near the door, accepting congratulations from people who'd ignored me an hour earlier, men who now saw me as a potential asset rather than a family liability. But I also caught fragments of conversation drifting from the coat check, the kind of whispered judgments that can end a career in Manhattan. Two of my father's senior colleagues were lingering. I had no idea Richard was so primitive with his own blood, one murmured. 78,000 for a starting nurse? My son just passed the bar and he's clawing for 62. The optics on this are a nightmare, Charles. Did you see his face when the hospital director walked in? Absolute gold. Makes you wonder what else is hiding behind that Ivy League facade. I watched my father standing alone in the corner of the emptying ballroom, the shadows of the chandeliers stretching across his face like bars. No one approached him. The partners who usually orbited around him kept their distance, already calculating the cost of being associated with a man whose character had been publicly dismantled. My mother was frantically gathering her things, her movements jerky and uncoordinated, avoiding eye contact with everyone, as if she could disappear if she just looked away hard enough. Mr. Harris stopped beside me on his way out, his heavy wool overcoat draped over his arm. Miss Lewis. He pulled a heavy, matte-finished business card from his wallet. If you ever need a recommendation, a reference, or just a seasoned perspective on navigating this city, don't hesitate. You have a rare kind of leverage, Madison. Thank you, Mr. Harris. Your father is a skilled attorney, one of the best litigators I've seen. He paused, the silence heavy with unspoken disappointment. But tonight, I learned something about his character I wish I hadn't. A man who can't value his own best talent is a man I can't trust with a long-term partnership. Good luck to you." He shook my hand and left, his footsteps echoing down the hallway like a closing gavel. I looked across the room. Olivia was still at the head table, alone amidst the wreckage of half-eaten appetizers and champagne flutes. Now she was watching me, not with anger, not with jealousy, but with a profound, disorienting confusion, like a child seeing the world without a filter for the first time. Our eyes met for a long moment, the emerald of her dress suddenly looking garish and out of place in the dimming light. Then she stood up and started walking toward me, her movements hesitant. I braced myself for whatever was coming next, expecting a defense of the status quo or a plea for family unity. Olivia stopped in front of me, her makeup slightly smudged. "Madison?" Her voice was hesitant, stripped of its usual confidence. "Are you okay?" I almost laughed, a sharp, dry sound. "Are you seriously asking me that? After 22 years of being the background noise to your life?" I didn't know it was this bad." "How could you not know, Olivia? You were the one holding the spotlight." She looked down at her designer heels. "I guess I thought this was just how our family worked. Dad bills the hours, Mom manages the image, Dad talks about you, Mom focuses on me. And you?" She trailed off, the realization hitting her like a cold front. "I stay invisible. I'm the tax you pay for being the favorite." I never thought of it like that. She looked up, and I was surprised to see her eyes glistening with real tears. "I just thought you were quiet, that you didn't want the attention because you were so focused on your charity work." I wanted to be seen, Olivia. I just learned I'd never get it unless I lit the room on fire. We stood in silence as the restaurant staff began the clinical process of clearing the tables, the sound of silverware clinking like bone. "I'm sorry." Her voice cracked, reaching a frequency of honesty I hadn't heard from her since we were children. "I know that doesn't fix the last 4 years, or the last 4 hours, but I am. I'm sorry for being part of it." "You don't need to apologize for Mom and Dad, Olivia. They're grown adults who made their own choices. I'm apologizing for me, for never asking, for never noticing that you were drowning in plain sight." She wiped her eyes, the emerald silk of her sleeve catching the light. "For just accepting how things were because it was easier for me." I felt something shift in my chest. Not forgiveness, not yet. The wounds were still too fresh for that. But something softer than the stone wall I'd built. "You were 19, Olivia. You're still 19. You're a product of their system, but you don't have to be the successor to it." "What happens now with us?" I considered the question carefully, looking out the floor-to-ceiling windows at the sprawling grid of Manhattan. "You're my sister. That doesn't change. But the Lewis family contract is null and void. We rebuild on respect, or we don't rebuild at all." "I want that." Her voice was small but sincere. "I want to actually know the person who out-earned a junior associate on her first day." "Then start by seeing me. Not as a comparison, not as a black sheep, just as me." She nodded again. It was a beginning, a fragile, uncertain one, but a beginning nonetheless. 2 weeks after the party, Nana called with news from the grapevine of the legal community. "Your father's having a difficult time at the firm, Maddie." I was in my new apartment, a sun-drenched studio in Brooklyn Heights, unpacking boxes of medical textbooks. "What do you mean?" "Mr. Harris told some of the other partners about that night. The story spread faster than a viral tweet through the NY Bar Association." She paused, and I could hear the smirk in her voice. "Apparently, several high-value clients have requested to work with different attorneys. They're citing alignment of values as the reason." "They're leaving Dad?" "Not entirely, but they've made it clear they prefer colleagues with better long-term character," as one of them put it. "The Lewis brand is currently trading at a discount." I sat down on an unopened box, the weight of it finally sinking in. I wasn't sure how to feel about this. I hadn't wanted to ruin him. I just wanted to exist. "He's not getting fired or anything," Nana continued, "but his reputation took a hit that no amount of billable hours can fix. The golden boy image has some serious tarnish now." "I didn't want that, Nana." "You didn't cause it, sweetheart. He did. You just stopped being the one who polished the trophy." That afternoon, my mother called for the first time since the gala. "Madison." Her voice was tight, vibrating with the stress of a woman losing her grip on her social standing. "We need to talk about your father's colleagues. They keep asking about you, bringing up the party at every charity event and board meeting. It's affecting his work, Maddie. The atmosphere at the firm is uncomfortable." "That's not my fault, Mom. I didn't give the toast." "You could talk to Mr. Harris. Explain that your father didn't mean..." "Didn't mean what? To humiliate me? To wish Olivia had my accomplishments? To treat me like a footnote in my own life?" Silence. The kind of silence that happens when there are no more excuses left to make. "I can't control what people think about Dad, Patricia," I said, using her name for the first time, signaling the end of her authority. "That's the consequence of his actions, not mine. I'm not the family's spin doctor anymore." "Madison, please. I'm not going to clean up his mess, Mom. Not anymore. I have a shift starting in 4 hours, and I have lives to save that actually matter." I hung up. For years, I'd protected my family's image by staying quiet, by accepting less, by making myself small so they could feel big. Those days were over. The consequences of their choices were theirs to carry, and they were finally feeling the weight of the air they'd been breathing. My first day at Presbyterian Memorial, I stood outside the trauma unit doors for a full minute, just breathing, letting the hum of the hospital wash over me. The badge clipped to my navy blue scrubs said, "Madison Lewis, RN, Emergency Medicine." My name, my title, my achievement, earned in the trenches, not in a boardroom. "Ready for your first shift?" Dr. Webb appeared beside me, looking less like a corporate director and more like the seasoned physician he was. More than ready. "Good, because the ER waits for no one, and we've got a multi-car pileup coming in from the FDR drive." Inside was controlled chaos, the beautiful high-stakes symphony of life-saving. Monitors beeping, nurses calling out vitals, doctors moving with purpose through a sea of blue and green. I was assigned to a veteran nurse named Gloria for my first week. She showed me the systems, the shortcuts, the blood-stained reality of the job. "You're good," she told me after my first patient intake, a high-speed trauma case where I'd caught a declining heart rate before the monitors even tripped. "Really good. Whoever trained you knew what they doin'." I had an excellent professor at NYU, and my grandmother was a nurse for 40 years. "Eleanor Mitchell?" I blinked. "You know her?" Gloria laughed, a warm, raspy sound. "Honey, everyone in this hospital knows the Iron Eleanor. She helped train half the senior staff before they were even residents. That woman is a legend in these halls." I felt a warm glow spread through my chest. The first time the Lewis name felt like something to be proud of. A bouquet of sunflowers was waiting in the break room from Nana, with a note. "To my granddaughter on her first day. I've always been proud of you, not for what you do, but for who you are." My first real patient was an elderly woman, 72, chest pains. She was alone, scared, gripping the bed rails with white knuckles. I took her hand, my touch firm and grounded. "I'm Madison. I'm going to be with you through this. You're not alone, and you're in the best hands in the city." Her grip relaxed, her breathing steadied. This was why I chose this. Not for the gold embossed invitations or the Ivy League prestige, but for this. For the power to be a light in someone's darkest hour. 3 months later, my life looked completely different. I had a job I loved, colleagues who respected me as a peer, an apartment that finally felt like home, and Nana Eleanor who visited every Sunday for proper English tea and stories of her days in the Bronx hospitals. As for my family, my father still hadn't called, not once. I wasn't surprised. Richard Lewis didn't apologize, he simply litigated until the problem went away. But I wasn't a problem anymore. I was a success he couldn't claim. My mother texted occasionally, short, anemic messages like, "Thinking of you." Never an acknowledgement of what happened, never an apology. I responded politely, briefly, nothing more. But Olivia surprised me. She called every Sunday, right before Nana's visits. We'd talk for 20 minutes, sometimes more. She told me about revisiting her law school options. She was looking at NYU and Fordham now, staying closer to the city, making her own path away from the Harvard expectation. She asked about my patients, my shifts, my life in the real world. "I want to understand you, Maddie," she said one Sunday. "Not the version of you I thought I knew. The real you. The one who didn't break." It wasn't perfect, and we had years of silence to bridge, but she was trying. That meant something. The Lewis family wasn't healed. Maybe it never would be in the way the brochures promised, but I'd stopped waiting for that healing to come from anyone but myself. I set new rules. I would answer if they reached out, but I wouldn't chase their approval anymore. I would attend family events if invited, but I wouldn't tolerate a seat at the back table. I would love them from a distance if that's what it took to protect my peace. Boundaries weren't punishment. They were the structural integrity of my new life. Sometimes, on quiet evenings, I sit on my balcony and watch the lights of the Manhattan Bridge flicker on. I think about the journey that brought me here. 4 years of working myself to exhaustion, trying to earn love I should have had freely. One night of public humiliation that could have broken me, and one decision that changed everything. I stopped pretending to be invisible. Here's what I learned. Your worth doesn't depend on whether anyone else sees it. The people who should love you unconditionally sometimes can't. And that's not your failure, it's their limitation. Boundaries aren't revenge. They're not punishment or cruelty. They're the line you draw between what you'll accept and what you won't, the border between who you are and who others want to be. Not everyone who shares your blood deserves the title of family. Real family, the people who show up, who see you, who celebrate your victories and hold your hand through failures. Sometimes they share your DNA, and sometimes they just share your scrubs. I didn't beat my parents that night at the Sterling. I just stopped losing myself to them, and in the end, that was the only victory I ever needed.